Hello and welcome, trainers. I'm Joe. Here with me is my co-host, Dan.
Hello and greetings.
And today we're discussing the next Pokemon, Charmeleon. And this is the middle evolution to Charmander. He's honestly got some killer stats. And no offense, but I always found him kind of OP if you go back to the OG era, because like the minute you get Slash, which crits about 95% of the time, or so it seems, War Turtle's not much of a problem. You can one-shot him. So what the heck is going to stop you from just using Ember or Flamethrower or Slash on everything that moves? My point is just Charmeleon was a little OP and overpowered. Now, if you're using Ivysaur, he wasn't too much of a problem. And if you're fighting a Charmeleon with War Turtle, obviously it wasn't too hard. But when you had control of Charmeleon, there was almost no way you could lose. And I say that because I've honestly almost never heard of Charmeleon fainting. I think I got him to faint once, and that's just a testament to how bad I was. But outside of that one time against Blue, I don't think I ever had Charmeleon faint against even the rival in Red, Blue, and Yellow.
And that is something with Gen 1 that was set up, because high crit moves like Slash and Razor Leaf pretty much always crit.
Yeah.
And that is something that was debuffed. That was debuffed in later games where, yes, high crit rate, but it's not as it's not going to crit every single time.
It should. But that said, Charmeleon was a powerhouse. You set up maybe Dig / Flamethrower on this guy, and he's got every Pokemon cornered. Only thing is, I never really, after the first few playthroughs, I stopped putting Dig on him. I wanted to put it on another Pokemon who could put Dig to better use. In turn, I waited till I got Earthquake to put on Charizard. And that always turned Charizard into a major powerhouse and cleared out electric types from being a problem for him. As Charizard has a great deal to fear from electric types as a flying type. That said, for Charmeleon, he doesn't have that glaring weakness of Charizard, but his stats aren't as good as Charizard, so you're kind of biding your time till you reach the Charizard phase.
He's your usual middle evolution.
Yeah. I kind of find Charmeleon more powerful than Quilava in some ways.
Yes, and that's for good reason, because Quilava is really good. But Charmeleon, yeah, he doesn't get all the favor that Charizard gets. But even so, Charmeleon is a very good, solid choice.
And although that said, Typhlosion's obviously better than Charizard. My point is just Charmeleon over Quilava. Although that being said, when it comes to middle evolution fire types, or even a lot of other fire types, Charmeleon was a pretty remarkable Pokemon. And now we get to anime and other depictions. He's not really depicted in any of the OVAs when he's Red's Pokemon. You've got Pokemon I Choose You, where essentially he got a neutered arc. I call it neutered because Ash and Charmeleon got neutered there in character. Because the beauty of Charmeleon's character development is that it is entirely Ash's fault that he kind of went awry. And it allowed for Ash to have to grow and learn that he's not perfect and face his flaws, which that's an integral part of a journey for such a character as Ash. And for Charmeleon, he had to learn to open his heart back up to Ash after Ash had mistreated him. And I blame Ash because in this situation, he's essentially the parent. It's on him to extend the olive branch first. Oh, well, Charmeleon wouldn't listen. Yeah, well, can you blame him? Ash was so fixated on Pikachu, you'd almost think, he was into Pikachu or something. I'm being facetious. It's just Ash, there was no Pokemon other than Pikachu. And the trouble is, Charmander had happily evolved for Ash into Charmeleon. And the reaction was one of rejection on Ash's part. And this is something which Charmeleon, we have to bear in mind, he had a lot of traumas regarding being strong and being good enough. And we got to bear in mind that Ash, shortly after Charmeleon evolved, told him, all right, you're going to have to lose against a parasite. Pretty much the weakest Pokemon around. And Charmeleon's like, what? Now, he's got traumas related to losing. So he's like, no, I can't lose, because if I lose, I'll be thrown away. And Ash got really angry with Charmeleon for not wanting to lose.
And Ash, that's a situation where Ash should have put his foot down with Pikachu.
Yes, Pikachu losing was not so bad. And Charmeleon did lose in the end, got humiliated, and Ash went, woohoo! Basically, which, what does that communicate to Charmeleon? Woohoo, I'm going to throw you away later. Like, there's no way he didn't take it that way. And then he realized Ash, no offense in some ways, might be willing to throw him away. And I know people will say Ash would never. He did technically throw away Butterfree. I know there's context and situation, but looking at it from Charmeleon's point of view, Ash is not behaving like he was during that rainy day episode with Charmander. He's behaving more and more like the one who threw Charmeleon away.
He started taking his Pokemon for granted.
Yeah, except for Pikachu. And no offense, but I would argue Pikachu is not half as great as... Ash's Pikachu is not half as great as Ash thought he was. That Pikachu may have quite a bit of power, but it's a very dumb Pokemon. It doesn't have much in the way of brains. And that Pikachu is spoilt rotten. I only bash it a little because, well...
It is brought up in the series several times.
Yeah, and the trouble is this conflict between Charmeleon and Pikachu put the other Pokemon into this. This basically became the father versus probably the second child, in a way. I say second child because Pikachu's technically the... Well, it might be actually... Pidgeotto is kind of the eldest, and you have Charmeleon who's like the second eldest. It kind of puts the two in conflict, which puts everyone else in the middle. From Squirtle to Bulbasaur and whatnot. And Bulbasaur also liked to poke his nose into it, which that's not good. And we got to bear in mind, given Ash's rejection of Charmeleon, this later had an effect on Bulbasaur, who became infantilized and determined to never grow up. So he doesn't evolve and doesn't come into his own because he's scared of rejection and Ash abandoning him. So even he, on an unconscious level, understood why Charmeleon was angry and lashing out. And he kind of had the same mentality. That showcases that Ash was actually not a very good trainer there. Because it's his job to reassure them and assure them that, no, if they do evolve... Actually, they should evolve because this is what's healthy for them. It's called growing up. And that it's okay to grow up. There's nothing to be afraid of. Charmeleon was just put in an... Like, it's not that Charmeleon was an angel. Like, let's be honest. He's basically going through a teenage phase. And the trouble is, he wants to grow stronger because initially he wanted to prove himself worthy to Ash. But then Ash wanted him to lose a fight against the weakest Pokemon imaginable, which horrified him. And then when he did lose, Ash was pleased about it.
It took so long for Charmeleon and eventually Charizard to finally...
forgive Ash. And arguably, it also took time for Ash to realize that, yeah, I screwed up. This was not his fault. And here's the thing. There's something about Charmander that Ash did that he didn't do for the other Pokemon. We didn't mention this in the last episode. He swore an oath. Not a promise, an oath that he would never take advantage or take Charmander for granted. He would never reject him, and that he would protect him. What did he do when Charmander became Charmeleon? He broke that oath. So in that regard, honestly, Charmeleon was a bit more of a victim than he was a bully, because when Ash brings up that with that parasite thing, it was basically Charmeleon going, but you promised. You swore an oath. And Ash proved he didn't care. He didn't remember his oath. It didn't matter to him.
He was so focused on badges and tournaments.
He stopped caring about his other Pokemon. Unless they were called Pikachu. And that's where I think Charmeleon really took it personally, because you promised and you broke your word. What's the difference between you and the guy who threw me out into the rain? And I mean, no offense, morally, there's not much difference. Because Ash also, what did he use Charmeleon for? Well, my strongest Pokemon, I might as well throw him out when I can't win. Basically, Ash was validating the other guy's belief system and moral code by basically using Charmeleon the way he did, and even breaking his word to him. Ash is suffering from a major moral failure. Charmeleon, on his end, is kind of pointing it out and going, hello. That being said, Charmeleon is a bit of a bully towards some of the other Pokemon. He is. And it's just that he probably would not have been had Ash not remembered his oath and instead insisted that Pikachu lose the fight. Pikachu was not in any danger of... He doesn't have any related traumas like that. It's just Pikachu's ego. And it's also Ash's attachment to him. And this is something that you don't see with, say, red or blue or green or gold or silver. Like, a lot of the trainers in the Pokemon Adventures realize, don't put your traumatized Pokemon into this situation. I can't help but think that it's a good thing Crystal or Misty from the Adventures manga wasn't present to bash Ash over the head over that Charmeleon incident. Because Misty in particular would have been a little violent. Because she's got a Pokemon like that in the form of Gyara, or Gyarados. Well, the one she shares with Red. It's basically cloned between the couple. Whereas Crystal, I think, would have been more offended at the emotional insensitivity.
Yeah, because sure she has her team. Sure she catches Pokemon more for Oak's research. But she is a very moral young woman.
I know, that's why I pointed out she's probably one of the more moralistic trainers. And sanctimonious in some ways. And she would have lost it. Her and maybe, now that I think about it, maybe even Yellow to an extent, and some of the female trainers who'd be a little offended. That said, Ash needed to make these mistakes in order to grow as a person and to become one of the best trainers out there. And let's be honest, although he is not very kind to Charizard later, he is actually really good at training a Charizard. Let's be honest. His Charizard is a powerhouse who's able to stand up to Moltres, which is impressive. Yeah. Très impressionnant. Like, that Charizard could probably take down Entei. That's no easy feat in the anime and mangas. But that Charizard, powerful enough. The only thing is, no offense, how much trauma did he have to go through to get there? But that's basically the hero's journey, as well as the journey to adulthood. Charmeleon's going through a very, very difficult period as a teenager, as mentioned. But anyways, tell us what you think. Were we wrong? Were we right? And, well, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash that like and that subscribe button, as though you were Charmeleon trying to burn Ash's hair and hat off.